Village of Dalton has more than $3.5 million in the hole. Mayor Tiffany Henyard is accused of misusing money, and today she's nowhere to be found.
I've never seen any municipality have so many credit cards out there. Orders going out to each, getting money back.
Answer questions. There's something to hide.
Supporters of Earth have come out to disclose the details of Henyard's widespread corruption and questionable practices. Despite her apparent calm, the walls are closing in on Tiffany Henyard, and the once powerful mayor is watching her support evaporate. Panic is clearly starting to set in as allies desert her one by one. The drama is intensifying swiftly, and we have all the juicy details you won't want to miss in a shocking turn of events. When Christine Carroll, a trusted member of Thornton Township and one of her own alleged allies, suddenly switched sides and accused the self-declared super mayor of allegedly immoral and improper actions intended to increase her own influence, Henyard, often referred to as the Dalton dictator, was dealt a serious blow by an unexpected source. Henyard was already drowning in fraud allegations and under fire for her questionable spending habits, so it seems that even the super mayor couldn't buy her way out of this one trustworthy situation. The timing of Carla's betrayal couldn't have been worse. Today, I'm speaking out against Tiffany Henyard, the mayor of Dalton and the supervisor of Thornton Township, who I believe has behaved unethically and predatorily during her 2 years in government. Carla's claims have only served to exacerbate the situation, and it looks like Henyard's debt from power to soon employees, merchants, and residents have allegedly been exploited by Tiffany Henyard, who has used her position to increase her influence while presenting a misleading image of ESS that was made possible by the diligent taxpayers of Thornton Township, and the village of Dalton. A whistleblower has come forward to acknowledge that she kept quiet about Henyard's extravagant travels and extravagant spending during board meetings because she once trusted the administration, but that trust has since been destroyed. I am speaking up not only for myself, but also for those who have been impacted by Henyard leadership. Although it took Carmen Carroll some time to finally listen to her conscience, it's understandable given that the law seemed to be firmly in Henyard's pocket, while she was busy maxing out credit cards as if there were no tomorrow. And let's not forget that she believes there are many more victims who have been lied to, fired, or subjected to retaliation by Henyard, but have not yet come forward with that type of power behind her. It's no surprise that people were reluctant to speak up, as Henyard supposedly had her own squad of police officers on her payroll, ready to quiet anyone who dared to oppose her. Instead of removing the betrayal line, Henyard retaliated against her once loyal trustee, who came up with a new pseudonym. In typical Henyard fashion, she deflected attention and made up a tale about it, saying, "Perhaps I should get you a new moniker." She seems to acknowledge that the misconduct was happening all along, but she blames Carlisle for not speaking out sooner. This is significant because Henyard has been very silent about the case, even refusing to speak to the media without her lawyer present. Then, when Henyard tried to change the subject and blame Carmen for her job, Carla pulled the curtain back on Henyard harassment and corruption. "I didn't ask questions because I trusted the administration in the process. But as soon as I lost faith in the process, I started to ask questions. When you went on this national platform and claimed to know nothing about a foundation, I was in her southeast rooms when certain things happened. You were dishonest about the foundation until you unexpectedly showed up at my house and tried to convince me that someone else had started it after credit card restrictions, budget lockdowns, and of course, a prohibition on using township merchandise for shameful public relations campaigns. Unfortunately, this was the first time I really thought about supporting you." Just minutes before midnight, the Dependable made the motion to propose Henyard as mayor, and Carmen and Gonzalez weren't just trying to put an end to Har's party, they were ready to smash it shut. Although many in the audience believed that the end was arbitrary, it was later revealed that Henyard had applied for the position some time ago. Tiffany Henyard was nominated as a last resort, which is how she was appointed mayor. However, to be honest, if she hadn't even made it to the first round of nominations, it probably should have been interpreted as a sign that time was running out. Henyard was nominated at the last minute by Gonzalez in the hopes that the urgency of the situation would force the board to convene and make a decision before it was too late. Gonzalez later revealed that despite his continuous efforts to select the person he believed would be the best fit, he didn't want the township electors to choose the crucial supervisor's choice. The board was sharply split, and the deadline was drawing near midnight.
Brother, how do you feel right now?
Oh man, I'm overjoyed. I played in C County. I love it. That means that I am truly blessed and everyone loves me. I love
The recent hasty nomination of Tiffany Henyard as mayor of Dalton by Gonzalez has caused significant unrest throughout the city, sparking outrage among residents, many of whom are furious with the situation. One resident expressed their deep frustration over how senior citizens are bearing the brunt of Henyard's alleged corruption, noting that these vulnerable community members are struggling with basic essentials due to the mismanagement of funds. The general consensus among residents is that the Board of Trustees may have their own hidden motives, which is why they didn't want the public to have a say in the matter, leading to a growing sentiment that the public was deprived of their voice. As one resident put it, the situation was heartbreaking. Tax dollars were wasted, and elderly citizens were suffering as a result. There is an increasing belief that Henyard should be held accountable for her actions, with some residents even calling for her to be arrested to stop her from continuing to misuse the city's resources for her own benefit. For instance, the mayor's office, typically equipped with a cash register, was being used in questionable ways, fueling suspicions about her integrity and competence. Many also believe that Gonzalez and Carlisle, two members of the board, were not acting out of genuine concern for the community, but rather out of their own hidden agendas, further complicating the public's trust in the situation. It became increasingly apparent to the residents that Henyard was rushing through decisions to maintain her position of power and privileges. During a recent board meeting, Henyard attempted to speed through Agenda Item 3, which would have required backup invoices from the finance department, a move that, if successful, could have revealed some dubious expenditures. This attempt to push through an agenda without proper checks and balances raised suspicions among board members and the public alike. Adding to the controversy was the sudden dismissal of Keith Freeman, the former assistant, who had dared to expose Henyard's questionable activities. In a move that many perceived as politically motivated, Henyard swiftly appointed her loyal ally, Keith Price, to Freeman's position without consulting the board for approval. This decision was seen as a blatant power grab, as Henyard appeared determined to stack the deck in her favor by surrounding herself with individuals who would support her actions. However, her attempts to bypass the necessary procedures were not successful, as board members, particularly Gonzalez, refused to back down. In the meeting that followed, Gonzalez and Carlisle voted for transparency, signaling their commitment to holding Henyard accountable for her actions. In contrast, Henyard, who had hoped to force through the vote on the invoices and bypass the scrutiny, cast a single negative vote, reflecting her determination to keep control of the situation. For once, Henyard lost the round, and the tide seemed to turn against her. The public's growing anger and the vote of the board members in favor of transparency sent a clear message that the community was no longer willing to tolerate her manipulations. In the end, the situation has only fueled the anger and frustration of Dalton residents, who are increasingly questioning Henyard's ability to lead and demanding accountability for the misuse of public funds. Despite her efforts to maintain control, it seems the tide is shifting and the future of her leadership is uncertain. The residents, especially the elderly, are desperate for a change in leadership, as the current administration's actions have directly impacted their quality of life. Many believe that it's time for Henyard to lose her job, and the actions of the board members who voted for transparency are a step in the right direction. The situation remains tense, but it is clear that the residents of Dalton are not going to back down until their concerns are addressed and the misuse of their hard-earned tax dollars is stopped once and for all.
the motion. A motion and a second.
Tiffany Henyard is fiercely fighting to regain control and authority within Thorne Township, as she continues to face opposition from the Board of Trustees. Recently, she called a special meeting to reverse new ordinances that imposed spending caps, a move she claimed hindered the township's ability to provide essential services to vulnerable groups, such as seniors and children. However, her attempt to push her agenda forward was met with a significant blow when none of the 4 trustees showed up to the meeting. In a bold move, Henyard addressed the empty room with a fiery statement, declaring that she would speak her mind without any interruptions or questions, making it clear that anyone who disagreed was free to leave. Her frustration was palpable, as she argued that the spending restrictions were preventing the town from fulfilling basic needs, such as purchasing bingo gift cards or ice cream for the elderly, a move that many saw as a shallow attempt to garner sympathy for her cause. Henyard's effort to reverse the regulations seemed like a strategic maneuver to deflect attention from her own questionable spending patterns. She seemed to be grasping at straws, attempting to position herself as a champion for the town's most vulnerable, while simultaneously deflecting scrutiny over her financial decisions. This raised the ire of Chris Gonzalez, a key member of the board, who made it clear that the board must approve all event budgets, including those tied to Henyard's personal interests, such as her Friends of Tiffany's Henyard Picnic, a fundraising event linked to her political campaign. Her attempts to sidestep the rules were seen as yet another power play to avoid any accountability. During the heated exchange, Henyard, visibly agitated, asked rhetorically whether she still provided for the residents of the town and questioned whether the absence of the trustees at the meeting meant that the annual picnic would not take place this year. She seemed to imply that the lack of support for her initiative was indicative of some larger crisis. However, Gonzalez wasn't swayed by her emotional appeal and quickly responded with sharp clarity, stating that Henyard was manipulating the situation to make it seem as though there was an emergency when in reality, her priorities were misaligned. Gonzalez pointed out that the core issue was that the township was failing to take care of its children, and that this was a direct result of Henyard's decision to prioritize her own interests over the essential needs of the community. His response was a clear message that the board and the residents were no longer willing to tolerate Henyard's approach to governance. The heated exchange highlighted the deepening rift between Henyard and the board, with tensions rising as she continued to push for more power and less oversight, while the trustees sought to maintain fiscal responsibility and ensure that the town's limited resources were spent wisely. The debate over spending priorities has become a focal point of the larger struggle for control in the township, with Henyard's critics accusing her of using her position for personal gain, while she portrays herself as a defender of the community's most vulnerable members. The situation has become a battleground of competing visions for the future of Thorne Township, with Henyard fighting to maintain her position of power, even as her actions come under increasing scrutiny. As the conflict continues to unfold, it is clear that the battle over spending, accountability, and leadership is far from over, and the future of Thorne Township hangs in the balance. The residents are watching closely, and it remains to be seen whether Henyard's attempts to reverse the ordinances and maintain control will be successful, or whether the board will stand firm in holding her accountable for her actions. Regardless of the outcome, the growing divide between Henyard and the trustees has only intensified the ongoing unrest within the township, and it is clear that significant change is needed if the community is to move forward in a way that truly benefits all its residents. The situation surrounding Tiffany Henyard's alleged corruption in Dalton has escalated dramatically, with excessive spending and questionable dealings raising serious concerns throughout the community. A recent scandal has brought to light a $200,000 payment made to Oak Construction Company, a business with numerous red flags that has come under intense scrutiny. The payment, which was supposedly intended for roof and window replacements for elderly homeowners, was issued without a binding contract or any form of competitive bidding, raising alarms about how public funds were being handled. Oak Construction's connections to corruption are well documented, with the company being owned by individuals with a history of tax evasion and bribery, further complicating matters. The man behind Oak Construction is notably linked to former Alderman Carrie Austin, a political figure who continues to deny any involvement in directing contracts to such a questionable entity. Austin's legacy of corruption and her connections to shady figures have now resurfaced, shedding light on a disturbing pattern of unethical practices in the city. Adding to the mounting concerns is the fact that Alex Nadoff, an associate tied to the Oak Construction deal, is currently awaiting prison for bribing a Cook County assessor in exchange for property tax relief. This string of questionable activities raises critical questions about Henyard's decision to award a large sum of taxpayer money to such a disreputable company. With elderly residents relying on this funding for essential home repairs, many are now wondering if Henyard's actions have jeopardized their well-being, casting doubt on her commitment to the community's most vulnerable. Federal investigators are now involved in this growing scandal, probing Henyard's role in potentially facilitating or overlooking these corrupt dealings. As her meticulously crafted public image of a dedicated leader begins to unravel, it is becoming increasingly clear that Henyard may have been more focused on protecting her own interests than truly serving the people of Dalton. Compounding her troubles, one of Henyard's closest allies, L.S. Lacey, the former deputy police chief of Dalton, is currently embroiled in severe legal issues of his own. Lacey faces accusations of hiding assets to avoid paying creditors, including charges of bankruptcy fraud and perjury. He allegedly took extreme measures to conceal his income, even going so far as to fabricate a separation from his wife in order to lower his reported financial obligations. This revelation only deepens the cloud of suspicion surrounding Henyard, as her association with Lacey raises further questions about the integrity of her administration. Lacey's ongoing legal battles paint a troubling picture of the leadership surrounding Henyard, suggesting that the culture of corruption and dishonesty extends far beyond the mayor's office. Together, these scandals are beginning to expose a web of deceit, financial mismanagement, and potential criminal activity that is tarnishing the reputation of the entire Dalton government. As federal investigators delve deeper into these cases, it is becoming increasingly clear that Henyard's actions, both in awarding the Oak construction contract and in her continued association with individuals like Lacey, are a direct threat to the community's trust and the well-being of its residents. What was once seen as a strong leadership presence in Dalton is now being overshadowed by scandal, and Henyard's ability to maintain control is rapidly diminishing. With every new revelation, the calls for accountability grow louder, and it seems only a matter of time before the full extent of the corruption under Henyard's administration is exposed. The future of Dalton's governance now hangs in the balance, as the public demands transparency, justice, and an end to the rampant corruption that has plagued their city for far too long. Tiffany Henyard's financial commitments and political alliances are now under intense scrutiny as she faces mounting legal battles. With her close association to former Dalton Deputy Police Chief L.S. Lacey further complicating her situation. Despite the growing controversy, Henyard has been a staunch advocate for Lacey, even as he faces up to 45 years in prison due to a series of legal disputes, including charges of bankruptcy fraud and perjury. As investigations continue, both Henyard and her inner circle are being pulled deeper into the legal firestorm surrounding their actions. Lacey's lawyer has argued that federal authorities are using him as a pawn to build a case against Henyard, claiming that the investigation into his financial misdeeds is a strategic move aimed at bringing down the mayor. However, this defense is weakening as more evidence of widespread corruption emerges, including accusations of Henyard weaponizing police raids and misusing taxpayer funds. With this new evidence, it appears increasingly unlikely that Henyard will be able to defend herself successfully against the growing list of charges. Locally, the dissatisfaction with Henyard's leadership is palpable, and even the residents of Dalton are speaking out about the growing corruption under her administration. A 23-year-old from South Holland called on the township leaders to take actions in good faith and to make information about Henyard's questionable actions more transparent, stating that despite her claims of wanting public participation in township decisions, her actions have done little to involve the residents or address their concerns. He pointed out that since attending his first meeting at Thornton Township, it seemed that instead of fostering transparency and engagement, Henyard's actions have increasingly worked against the residents of the town, fueling distrust in the local government. Another resident, Jay Watts, also responded to Henyard's comments regarding the voters' rejection of a mental health referendum, which would have resulted in increased taxes for Thornton Township. Watts condemned Henyard's dismissive remarks, highlighting the growing frustration among residents who feel that their voices are being ignored in the face of her political ambitions. It seems that the mayor's credibility is rapidly eroding, as her actions are now subject to more intense public scrutiny than ever before. To make matters worse, Henyard's involvement in numerous lawsuits has come to light, further complicating her position. Among these lawsuits is one that names her alongside Dolton Village trustee Andrew Holmes in a sexual harassment case filed by a Dolton police officer. This adds yet another layer of controversy to her already beleaguered administration, casting a dark shadow over her leadership and raising serious questions about her ability to continue in office. As the lawsuits pile up and the legal cases intensify, the pressure on Henyard is mounting. Public outcry is growing louder, with calls for transparency and accountability becoming more urgent as residents demand answers. The case against her and her administration seems to be building momentum, and it appears that the walls are closing in on Henyard and her allies. The people of Dolton are no longer willing to turn a blind eye to the corruption that has taken hold of their government, and the demand for change is louder than ever. With federal investigators closing in on her actions, the future of Henyard's leadership remains uncertain. It is clear that she is facing a tidal wave of legal and public scrutiny, and it remains to be seen whether she will be able to weather the storm or if her administration will crumble under the weight of her corruption. The situation surrounding Tiffany Henyard's administration in Dolton continues to worsen, with a series of legal battles and mounting accusations of corruption and abuse of power threatening to undermine her leadership. One of the most recent and highly publicized lawsuits involves a local barbershop owner who claims that Dolton officials wrongfully denied him a business license. This case has raised eyebrows in the community, with residents questioning the fairness and transparency of the administration's decision-making processes. In another troubling development, Wayne Thrash, a former maintenance manager for the township, has filed a lawsuit that is sending shockwaves through the community. Thrash alleges that in 2023, one of Henyard's close allies approached him with a dubious plan to replace the school board's attorney with a law firm chosen by the mayor's inner circle, an apparent move designed to solidify her control over key legal matters in the town. When Thrash refused to go along with the plan, things took a dramatic turn for the worse, according to the lawsuit. He was unexpectedly fired while on an unauthorized vacation, with the town citing poor work performance and insubordination as the reasons for his dismissal. Thrash has denied these allegations and claims that the real reason for his termination was his refusal to comply with the mayor's questionable requests. In addition to accusing Henyard of wrongful termination, Thrash has filed a legal complaint alleging that his rights under the First and 14th Amendments were violated, suggesting that his firing was not only unjust, but also a violation of his constitutional rights. The case has sparked outrage among residents, many of whom are appalled by what they see as a pattern of corruption and retaliatory actions against those who dare to challenge the mayor's authority. The fact that such a significant number of lawsuits are piling up against Henyard has many people in the community questioning how long this can continue before the state steps in to intervene. It is becoming increasingly difficult for residents to ignore the mounting evidence of unethical behavior and potential legal violations within the mayor's office. One particularly displeased resident voiced their frustration, stating that it was mind-boggling that the state of Illinois had not yet taken action to take over the city and remove Henyard from office. Many others in the community share the sentiment, believing that the state should intervene to restore fairness and integrity to the local government. The growing sense of disillusionment and anger among Dolton residents has reached a tipping point, and there is a growing sense of urgency for the state to take action and remove Henyard from power. As the legal battles continue to unfold and the public outcry intensifies, it is clear that the situation in Dolton has become untenable. The community is fed up with what they see as a corrupt and out-of-touch administration, and there are increasing calls for transparency, accountability, and a change in leadership. In a final plea for justice, the displeased resident urged others to stay informed and demand accountability, encouraging viewers to like and subscribe to keep up with the latest updates on the ongoing scandal. It's clear that Dolton is at a crossroads, and the future of the city now hinges on whether the state of Illinois will step in to address the corruption and restore integrity to the local government. Thank you for watching Star Buzz.